My sister can't even support herself. I'm talking about never has money for anything. And she has the audacity to go and get pregnant again. We already told her, hey, you can't support this kid. You already have another child. She didn't care, and she does what she does because she is selfish. I'm Olivia, and life's thrown me in the middle of the most difficult battle. My head's not in the right space, and I need your help to make the right decision. Should I raise my sister's children as my own? I've always wanted to be a mother, and I do adore Sarah's children. This is my chance to become the mother I never had. But will raising her children always remind me of what she's put me through in her life? I'm 28 years old, living the best life with my longtime boyfriend, James. I have a decent job and we're both getting by in life fairly. My childhood, on the other hand, was pretty chaotic, because my mother was a true narcissist who lived in a loop. My parents were never present, and I ended up raising my younger sister, Sarah, on my own. Every 6 months, she would start a new affair and come back to my dad, as if he had nothing better to do but to wait around on her. Well, in reality, he didn't. She completely forgot about her daughters while all this was going on in her life, and my father was a broken man who thought there was something wrong with him because he could not make my mom happy. He had such low self-esteem. I developed a protective attitude towards Sarah, who grew up in a mess because she never had to take responsibility for anything. Because I was always there to shield her from, well, harm. Sarah's taken up on my mother. She's selfish and more often manipulates me into her needs. She's 26 years old and a free-spirited woman. She first became pregnant while she was a college student, and she did so again several years later when she went on a trip with some hippies. She now has 2 children, both from different men who are uninvolved in their lives. Sarah, who now lives with Emma, says that she has found her soulmate. Both Sarah and Emma are bisexual. As long as they're both happy, I'm okay with this complicated family she's made. As we grew older, we drifted apart and carried on with our lives, until one day it seemed like history was repeating itself. I'll just go back to the evening when everything began. It was 1 a.m. on a cold, rainy night when the doorbell rang. Well, I could see Sarah's exhaustion on her face as I opened up the door. She stood in front of me, tears streaming down her cheeks, holding her 2 children. Seeing her in such a vulnerable state broke my heart. After all, this is the girl I raised as a mother. She pleaded, "Please, Olivia. I don't know what to do. I have nothing now that Emma left and I have no one else to turn to. Can we occupy your home just for a bit?" As I mentioned, Emma is Olivia's girlfriend, or should I say ex-girlfriend now. As much as I love these kids, I don't think my sister would have wanted to stop by my house in the middle of such a chilly, dark night if she did not have ill intentions. I mean, heck, I know her. She's always up to something. "Sarah? What's going on?" "Olivia," she started bawling her eyes out. "Just come inside, you're drenched." Without hesitation, I welcomed Sarah and her children into my home. I knew it wasn't going to be easy with 2 children under the same roof, but my protective instinct towards Sarah kicked in, and I could not bear the thought of leaving my sister and her little ones out in the cold. I was prepared for the worst, but to my surprise, the first few weeks went smoothly. I loved having the kids over, and Sarah appeared grateful and seemed to appreciate everything I did for her. We frequently sat together and discussed life. Emma and Sarah were not getting along because of the kids. Emma did not like the kids being around and felt they were too young to waste their life being parents. The night Sarah came to my house, they had a big fight and decided to call their relationships quit. However, things quickly changed. Sarah started to act entitled, refusing to find a job or contribute to household expenses. Instead, she spent her days lounging around and neglecting her parental responsibilities. She stopped feeding the kids or bathing them or even taking them or talking to them at one point. All she did was drink, just some wine, acting suspicious, all around the house. She would leave the house at odd hours and come back drunk. One night, she kept frantically banging on my bedroom door, and when I opened it, I found her half naked and drunk. "Sarah, what's wrong with you? You can't keep behaving like this. Get your act together, or I'll have to ask you to leave." Her expression did not change at all, and she just laughed in my face and left. It's become so toxic, and I felt extremely bad for the kids. They were going through the exact same thing I went through with my parents when I was a kid. I did not want this, so I tried to call her, but she was always just shutting me down, claiming that I did not understand what she was going through. "Olivia, I love Emma, and I can't live without her, and my heart aches knowing that she's already over me and has started dating Mark." "Mark?" "Yes, Mark is our common friend who Emma's dating, and I can't let this happen." "Sarah, you have your kids to think about. Stop acting so entitled and start behaving like a mother for the sake of these young lives." Well, nothing changed. I finally started taking most of her kids' responsibility onto my shoulders. Not along with my job, I was taking care of 2 full-grown children. I would feed them and look after them because her mother did not care at all. The kids started calling me their favorite aunt, and as much as I loved hearing it, I was afraid that they were living a fake life. And one day, they would have to go back to their reality. The tension in the house grew unbearable. And I don't know, I felt like I was being taken advantage of. She would just roam around the house as if she was 7 years old with zero responsibility. I talked to James, whom I've been with for the past 3 years, and we're planning a wedding soon. But he completely just, shut me down, saying, "This is between you and your sister." For the past 3 years, he's been great with me. We both have built this simple life together. James and I met in the gym. We both loved working out and started seeing each other soon after. He's a great guy. He knows, my emotional childhood trauma, and wants me to stay far away from my sister. From the day Sarah came to our house, he's been distant. He keeps insisting that I cannot take the burden of Sarah and her kids for my entire life and should ask them to leave, but my protective nature towards Sarah does not allow me to do that. I could not believe the way James was acting. This was so unlike him. After all, he knew how my childhood was and how spoiled of a brat Sarah could be. But I can never let those kids suffer because of that. I wish he understood what I was going through and just heard my feelings like he always does. One day, while we were all out in the yard, kids were playing and I was having my evening coffee. Sarah dropped a bombshell. "I'm pregnant." She announced it as if it was no big deal. I could not believe, and almost spilled the hot coffee over my clothes. It took me a good 2 minutes to wrap my head around what she just said. "Emma, you're already struggling to support yourself and 2 children, and now you want to bring another life into this mess. Who's the father, Sarah? This is unacceptable. What are you doing? You need to start contributing or find another place to live." Well, she stood there, dumb, pretending like she could not hear me while sipping her coffee. I could feel the tears welling up in my eyes as I watched how unbothered she was with all that was going on because of her arrogant, reckless behavior. I just could not keep on doing this. I never lived my own childhood days because my sister was my responsibility. I cannot let her take away my youth. She has to understand her responsibility and start acting like an adult. If she can go around just getting pregnant while she's unable to take care of her kids, if she can be this mind-numbingly stupid, she might as well do this alone. "Sarah, you better find yourself a job in a week or I will ask you to leave." I yelled and walked away. I felt this gut-wrenching pain in my stomach and I almost puked. I never intended for it to get to this point, but I had, to stop supporting her careless actions. Moreover, I wanted a better life for her children because they're too young to deal with this. It felt like those kids were helpless and I was just standing there letting her mother treat them unfairly, as all of my childhood memories just came flooding back to me. For the benefit of her kids, Sarah needs to start owning up to her mistakes and start making some serious changes in her life. Update number 1. As a follow-up to my previous post, I must admit that a week has passed since I asked Sarah to leave the home, once she had a suitable place to live. And ever since, I've been second-guessing my choice. Not because I'm worried about Sarah, but rather because I'm worried about the children. How can I push the kids away now that I know she's completely incapable of caring for them? Even though it's kept me up at night, I can't let her ruin my life as well. So, I remained firm until last week, when Sarah informed me one day that she would be shifting tomorrow to a home on the other side of the town. As Sarah was packing her belongings, I could not help but feel a sense of relief wash over me. The tension that's been building up between us had become insufferable, and I knew it was time for her to go. But just as I was about to help her load her things into the car, I saw something that made my blood run cold. As Sarah turned around to grab her purse, a file from her bag slipped. Curiosity got the better of me, and I took the file and kept it in my coat. It was a file of some blood testing, and they had run it on both parents in order to ensure the fetus's health. My heart sank as I realized that the father of Sarah's unborn child was none other than Emma's new partner, Mark. I don't know how much about Emma and have never even seen Mark, but my gut's telling me that Emma's oblivious to this ugly situation. I felt a rage building up inside me, and I could not believe what I was seeing, and my brain felt tired, thinking how Sarah could do something so twisted and vengeful. Was this her way of getting back at Emma for leaving her? Or was it just a sick coincidence? My body froze there as I saw Sarah's car moving further and further away from where I was standing. I couldn't even say bye to the kids. They left. For days now, I've been watching the reports and thinking if I should ask Sarah what's happening, and does Emma even know? I gave up eventually and confronted Sarah about it. With nothing else but the reports in my purse, I went to the address she gave me, and I was preparing a ton of questions for her and planning the argument that was going to take place the entire time. When I finally saw her, I was speechless and just stood there, while holding up the report to her to see what she was going to say. She gave me a firm look and made no attempts to dispute it. Instead, she said, "I know. Yeah, I knew this would get to you," with a chilly smile and a calculating look. I was completely speechless. How could she be so cold-hearted? Everything suddenly made sense. Sarah's arrogant attitude, her refusal to work or contribute to household expenses, and her total disregard for the welfare of the children. It was all part of a cunning scheme to harm Emma and me, the two villains of her life. I wanted to get in touch with Emma and find out if she's even aware of the circumstance. I once came close to driving up to Emma's house because I wanted to know how my sister's baby's father was. But I couldn't, because of everything that's happened. I've been so removed from my current reality that I can't recall the last time I had a quiet dinner with James. Over the next few days, I could not get the image out of the report of my head. I couldn't believe that somebody I love and trusted could do something so cruel. I felt like I've been stabbed in the back, and the pain was almost unbearable. James came home from work one day and asked me out to dinner. I didn't feel like it at first, but after giving it some thought, I realized it was also unfair to him and agreed to go to our favorite restaurant. I showered and put on my best outfit. For this one night, I just wanted to forget about Sarah and the kids and the crisis and enjoy dinner and a pleasant conversation. I had a glimmer of hope that my normal life would return as I dressed, and then we drove to the restaurant in our car. We were both quiet the entire way there, but I hoped that once we were seated next to one another, we would have plenty to talk about. I poured a glass as our favorite wine and began conversing. We were talking about how far apart we were getting and how our jobs were going, and suddenly he said, "Olivia, I can no longer do this. I want to break up." My eyes were wide open, and floods of tears began to fall as I murmured the word, "Why?" "I can't see you suffer because of Sarah my entire life." "But she's gone, James." Is she? You constantly worry for her and her kids. You're never present. When was the last time we talked to each other? When was the last time we mentioned our wedding? The fact that this was happening to me shocked me. He was speaking constantly, but I swear they were not reaching my ears. It felt like I was in a black and white movie with no sound. I stood up and walked away. Although I could see him following me, my body was screaming at me to keep going. I hailed a cab and left as quickly as I could. My life fell apart over the course of the following few days. I stopped going to work and went inside to lock myself up. He did not even return to pick up any of his belongings after that evening. Instead, I got a text that said, "Call me when you're ready to talk." I occasionally curl up in his clothing at night and sit tightly because they smell like him. I must be acting so pitifully, right? My life seems to have no point right now. After a few days, I thought more critically and my attempt for Sarah grew. After all, things began to go south the moment she arrived. I then began to hold her responsible for all my problems and made the decision to never ever see her face again. Update number 2. After all of that had suddenly changed my life, I was broken, but as 2 months eventually passed by, I realized that I could not let Sarah's actions define me. I had to rise above it, move on. I threw myself into work, pouring all my energy into my job, and I started going out with friends more often, trying new things and exploring new hobbies. When one day, Child Protective Services gave me a call. I was still reeling from the shock of learning that Mark was the father of Sarah's unborn child. The voice on the other end of the line informed me that they've been keeping an eye on the situation and had made the decision to give custody of Sarah's 2 children to me. My heart sank as I listened to them. I currently feel as though my life is a pointless roller coaster with no destination. I'm still processing that James left, and I was beginning to feel like I had some measure of control over my life. What about this new obligation for children? Don't get me wrong. As you're all aware, I adore them to the hilt. But surely that's never enough. Being an aunt is a different experience, but what about being a mom to the kids? I don't know so much, it seems. How am I ever going to be able to do this? I was just overwhelmed by the feeling. How is this even possible? 2 months back, I just asked Sarah to leave my home. I had no idea how I would manage to look after 2 young children, much less give them the love and care they needed. But as the initial shock subsided, a new sense of determination set in. I knew I could not let these kids fall through the cracks. I had to step up. Be responsible for the sake of these children because they need a responsible adult in their life. Suddenly, my childhood flashed against my eyes. The way I suffered because of my parents, and I partly blamed them for the way Sarah turned out. I could never let that happen to my niece and nephew. No, they're too young. I said in my head loudly over and over. I started the process of taking custody of the children. I began to realize just how much work lays ahead of me. There were countless forms to fill out, interviews to conduct, and appointments to attend. It felt like a never-ending process, and at times, I wondered if I was in over my head. But I refused to let those doubts hold me back. I poured myself into learning everything I could about parenting, from reading books on child development to talking to other parents about their experiences. One day, I even reached out to Sarah, hoping that she, could offer some guidance. After all, she is their mother, and she knows them in and out. If I was doing this, I needed to know the kids from her perspective, but as I expected, she was uninterested in helping. As I navigated the complicated process of becoming a guardian, I began to see just how much these children needed me. It gave my life a new purpose, really. They had been through so much already with their mother's neglect and abandonment, and that all my problems and suffering somehow seemed so small. I could not bear to think of what might happen if they were left in the hands of somebody who simply didn't care. So I threw myself into the task at hand, determined to give these kids the best possible life. One day, the kids finally came home. They're home. I think they were as happy as I was to see them, and I hugged them for 5 long minutes. I was their mother, and I was determined to be the best mom in the world. I learned how to cook meals that they loved, spent countless hours playing with them, and made sure they knew that they were loved and cared for. And of course, there were a lot of bumps along the way. There were times when the kids acted out, throwing tantrums or refusing to listen to me. And there were moments when I felt like I was failing, wondering if I was doing enough to help them heal from the trauma they experienced. My work was suffering, and I could not afford it because if I was to do this right, I needed money. At times, I think of James. If he was with me, he would have loved these kids just as I did, and then I would also have a helping hand in finances because, oh boy, raising kids is expensive. Well, I wish I could muster up the courage and one day call him back to talk about the differences we had. Someday, to be back with an amazing man. But through it all, I kept pushing forward, never giving up these two little souls who had been thrust into my life, and gradually over time I saw the fruits of my labor. The kids started to open up to me, sharing their fears and their dreams, and they hugged me tight, told me they loved me more often and trusted me to guide them through life's challenges, and they finally realized that I was not just becoming not just their guardian, but their mother. It wasn't always easy, but it was worth it. Watching these two children grow and thrive under my care was one of the most rewarding experiences of my life. Looking back on this difficult time, I can't help but feel grateful for the unexpected turn of events that brought these children into my life. They taught me the true meaning of selflessness, of putting others' needs before my own, and they showed me that no matter how daunting a task may seem, with determination and love, anything's possible. What's up, guys? Mr. Reddito here. So I just want to let you know, I thought that was the end of the story. I was browsing through the comments, and you will not believe I found a new update that came out 4 months later. Guys, I have it all compiled here, so let's jump directly into this final update. Go ahead and subscribe to the channel and smash that like button, as it does support me a lot. And I do deeply appreciate that, guys. Here's your final update. Well, life's been amazing for the past 4 months, and there's so much that's happened recently. I was left to pick up the pieces of Sarah's shattered family, and it's been 45 days today that the kids are home. If I'm right, Sarah's now 5 months pregnant, and things are different now. I sometimes wonder if I should call Sarah and ask how she's doing. It would not have been easy losing her kids, and on top of that, she is pregnant, but I created this new life for us. I've got a hold of the kids. Every day we're learning and creating memories. The thought of her entering our lives again made me change my mind. I even changed my job to one that allows me to have flexible hours. I made a few fellow mother friends on this job, and they frequently come over with their children for play dates. If someone had told me a few months ago that my life was going to get much better, I would be, well, content. I would have laughed in their face. One Saturday, I had some colleagues over with their kids to my place. We were chilling in the backyard with our coffee and kids were playing. It almost felt like a dream. When suddenly I could not believe what I had just heard. Sarah had been offered a job in the company I work for, and she had turned it down deliberately. The news came from an office friend who had heard it from someone at the company. Apparently, she had been offered the junior position and even paid well and had benefits. But Sarah refused it. Her reasoning was that she did not want to work for peanuts, and she was waiting for a better offer. It was a ridiculous excuse. This was the last straw in my life. I felt like walking up to her and slapping her across the face. She was taking advantage of my kindness and using me to support her lazy and entitled lifestyle. It all made sense now. Her constant partying, neglecting her kids, and getting pregnant again without a second thought. She had been manipulating me this whole time just to take the responsibility of kids. She wanted to go back to Emma, and she just knew that with her kids in her life, it's impossible. This is the reason she came to my house 6 months ago. This is the reason she slept with Mark so that Emma would leave him for cheating and be sorry for what he did to Sarah. I have absolutely no idea what she was thinking about getting pregnant. If Emma did not want kids, what was she planning to do with this unborn baby? I was furious, hurt, and disappointed. How could someone be so selfish and manipulative? And I had taken her and her children in when they had nowhere else to go, and this is how she repaid me? By refusing to take responsibility and putting her own interest above her child's and mine? I was unable to let this go. I had to confront her one last time and force her to face the truth. I called her in order to get an explanation, so at first no one answered. A few hours later, a woman called and asked if I was Olivia. The voice was one I recognized right away. Emma answered, "Olivia, are you there? Could you please visit this hospital?" I left the kids with neighbors before running straight there. I could not stop wondering what was going on. I mean, why did Emma answer the phone? Did she know the truth about Mark and Sarah? Sarah and Emma, are they back together? I arrived at the hospital with a million questions in my head and discovered Emma was found. Emma was waiting outside Sarah's room. "Sarah, what's going on?" "Olivia, we lost the baby." "Oh my gosh, what? Where's Sarah? Is she okay?" "She's in treatment. We'll have to wait." "Emma, how did this happen?" Emma starts talking. "Sarah arrived at my house in the middle of the night intoxicated 2 months ago. That is when I learned about the pregnancy. She screamed at me for ruining her life and for Mark's infidelity. She was so drunk that she could not even stand on her own 2 feet. I told her we would just talk in the morning and that she should just crash on the couch tonight." I asked Mark right away if what Sarah was saying was true. And, well, he admitted to getting her pregnant when I questioned him and said he was deeply sorry for this. I left him that very moment and advised him to do the right thing for once and take care of Sarah and their unborn kid. In the morning, I told Sarah to leave and told her, Mark, that I wanted nothing to do with him. That was the last time I ever saw Mark. Sarah kept calling me over the few-week course, and I kept explaining to her I wanted to move on. Last night, she came to my house drunk as a skunk, and I opened the door. She passed out immediately, and I took her to the hospital because she was bleeding. I knew something was wrong with the baby. The doctor says that she had been really heavily drinking and never planned to keep the baby. After telling me all that happened, Emma left and she told me to convey this to Sarah, that she's moving on with her life and wants nothing to do with her. I waited for a few hours beside Emma's bed and she finally woke up. Looked at me. Said, "I'm sorry, Olivia." I wasn't even angry anymore. I managed to simply say, "That's not an excuse, Sarah. You had a chance for your child and yourself and you turned it down. How could you be this selfish?" I know I messed up. I'm sorry. Can't we just forget about it and move on?" "No, we can't just forget about it. You need to take responsibility for your actions, Sarah. You can't just run away from your problems and expect somebody else to take care of them. It's not fair for you. Or for me," I said firmly. We talked for a little while longer, but it was clear that Sarah was not willing to accept responsibility for her actions. She felt entitled and believed that she deserved better. I knew that I had to take matters into my own hands and do what's best for me. It was finally time I chose myself, and I left that hospital. I left Sarah and her problems forever. I never wanted to see her again. First, she had kids irresponsibly. Then she found Emma and decided to manipulate me into taking care of her children so she can go live happily ever after with Emma. And when she came to know Emma was with Mark, she decides to seduce Mark to hurt Emma, all the while never planning to keep the baby. I can't believe somebody could be so evil. I'm done. I learned a valuable lesson from this experience. I learned that sometimes we have to make difficult decisions and do what's best for ourselves and those around us, even if it means confronting those who we care about. I also learned that sometimes we have to let go of those who are toxic and just refuse responsibility for their action. I was healed enough to call James. He was so happy to hear my voice, and so was I. I felt rainbows and stars glowing together in the sky. I finally understood that James wanted me to end my suffering. He wanted me to choose myself first. I told him I got custody of the kids and he was thrilled. We both decided to take things slow and postpone the wedding for now. Slowly but surely, I was healing. I learned that life is full of unexpected twists and turns, and sometimes the people we trust the most can hurt us the most. But in the end, it's up to us to pick ourselves up, dust ourselves off, and keep it moving. Well, now looking back on the dark period in my life, I realized that night 6 months back was a turning point. It taught me that I'm stronger than I ever thought possible, and that I have the resilience to overcome even the most painful of experiences. Sarah may have been my sister, but her actions showed me that she was not somebody I wanted in my life. I had to let her go, no matter how much it hurt. I hope she learns from her mistake and takes steps to become better in herself. But for now, I have my hands full with 2 young ones who need my love and care. It won't be easy, but I'm ready for a tough challenge. Thank you for supporting me along the way. So talk about a twisted story. My goodness. Oh man. What do you guys make of this one? The first question I want to ask you is this. Have you ever been put in a situation that was even remotely similar to the one that I just read? The reason I ask that is because the comment section was surprisingly had anything to do with the actual story. It was countless people with encounters like this that they've been through, dropping it down in the comment section left and right. So my question to you is this. Have you ever been involved in a situation like the story we just read today? Or have you not? If you haven't, that's fine. Go ahead and smash that like button, subscribe to the channel. Either way, guys, I hope you enjoyed this one. If you're new, just know I post daily videos, and this is not my only channel. You can find my other channels in the description below. Have a fantastic day, and I will see you tomorrow. Peace.